webinar, virtual, however we want to call this. We're calling it the Online Learning Hub. I am here and we're welcoming you to Blast IU17's Online Learning Hub series. Today we are featuring Scott Ringkamp, and he's going to be talking about what is online learning, just to start with the basics, and how can you lead virtual learning effectively. He's actually our online learning coordinator, and I believe, Scott, you're getting your doctorate in online learning too, am I correct?
Oh yes, and that's happening right now too.
So we are very fortunate to have him in our wheelhouse. So before we get started, we just have a couple of reminders, a few reminders to let you know about. Just to avoid the kickback, if you could please remember to keep your Zoom muted, unless you have to make a comment, then you can obviously unmute it. But to avoid the kickback, if you could mute it, that would be great. Also, this session is going to be recorded and stored in our online learning hub, which we'll show you a little bit later. So if you feel uncomfortable with having your face recorded, feel free to stop video. However, as we are trying to keep in mind one of our goals to improve and build community and human interaction, especially during these times, we'd really appreciate if you're able to keep your video on. Our videos will be on throughout the whole series and the whole session. Today's session will be a presentation format with a question and answer at the end. We will keep it to 30 minutes, and then if the question and answer goes longer, not a problem. Then at the conclusion of the webinar, we will send a feedback form link for you to complete in the Zoom chat here. This form will help us understand your needs, because we have 2 weeks set and scheduled, but after the 2 weeks, we want to continue to grow with you guys and provide things that you might need. It also is going to keep keep us accounted for, as well as your own attendance, in case districts would ask who was involved. Are there any questions before we get started? Okay, I also want to introduce the other IU staff that is on the call. Erin Hamilton is here as well. She's one of our TAC, our training and consulting, and she focuses on literacy. Anything else, Erin? Elementary literacy. I know there's a lot of other stuff, but.
Yes, mostly elementary, early literacy.
Awesome. So without further ado, please remember that these are all free, so you can always jump onto these or tell your colleagues about them. But without further ado, we'll talk about a little bit more later on. I'd like to welcome Scott Ringkamp.
Thanks, Becky.
You're welcome.
All right. So my name is Scott Ringkamp. I've been with the IU for 4 years now, and yeah, good morning, everybody. So make sure you have your coffee available, and welcome to this, I guess, unprecedented time in education in Pennsylvania, with everybody being off and still trying to figure out how to do things. With that in mind, we talked a little bit about the video being on, and that's a great way to reduce the feelings of isolation when you're stuck at home. And there's also, I just want to make it clear, it's not a big deal if like your kids or your dogs walk through the background. There's always a good chance that my 3-year-old will run in here anytime during this presentation and try to jump in my lap, in which case I'll probably pick him up and have him wave at you guys, and then hopefully get him off screen before too long. But just understand that that's okay and expect it, and it's not a big deal. So our first session of all these sessions really is to try to establish a baseline about, what is online learning and what does that look like when it comes to your students, your staff, and all that stuff. So just a quick short history of online learning, and this is kind of ironic to me. So it has its history in distance learning, which at one point was like correspondence courses. Hold on a second. And mailing back and forth, and this is, my dad used to do this with chess when I was a kid. He would play chess. He would mail it back and forth between him and someone else in New York City, and the games would take 3 to 4 months to get done. It moved on then to like televised broadcasts, which it's kind of ironic because now in the state of California right now they're using PBS to teach their students online learning using PBS and televised broadcasts. And that was in the 90s. And then in the early 2000s, the internet came along, and we were able to connect right away, right between two people instantly. And the communication went from being a long, drawn out correspondence course where you had to wait for the postal service to email and chats. And now we're at the point where we can even do Zooms like this and have instant communication with a large group of people and actually see each other. And it's actually very similar to our classroom learning experience. So what is online learning? Just kind of a definition to set the tone for what we're going to be looking at over the next few weeks. Online learning represents the convergence of technology, content delivered digitally, and specific pedagogical tools and strategies. And that is that is a mouthful. That is a lot of information to digest and figure out. And what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks is, I wonder if is it really online learning, or is it more like a distance education situation? So I found this quote. 1 second, Ben. Hold on. Speaking of my 3-year-old, coming into the room. So this is Ben. Say hi, Ben. Can you wave to everybody? All right. All right, bud. Here's your ball, and I have to keep talking to some people. Okay. There you go. Can you go out in the other room and do it? Thanks. So that gave you some time to just read this quote here, and it says you can think of this less as planning a big formal party at your house and hosting 50 people, and more of having a crowd of 50 people suddenly show up at your front door hungry. And that is, I think, really sums up what we're trying to do over the next few weeks here with our students to keep them learning and keep them engaged with education, even when they're at home or when the situation is fluid and we don't know what is going on. And we don't know how many people we're dealing with or how we're doing it, but we are taking what we have, and hopefully these webinars over the next few weeks will equip you to feel more confident in the tools that you already have, so you can teach your students in an online environment or a paper and pencil or whatever it ends up being. So kind of a very firm definition, and then kind of the reality of what online learning actually it is for us. Now, there are kind of two different modes of online learning. So when you're looking at it, you have, and people talk about these terms, there's synchronous or there's asynchronous online learning, and you have kind of both fields. Synchronous is teacher-led, usually lecture activity. It's face-to-face time, and it's usually scheduled, let's say 9 o'clock every day, just like in the classroom. There really isn't much difference between synchronous education online and classroom education online, except for the fact that you're separated by distance, and you're doing it through Zoom or some other platform like that. And that itself doesn't really make it online learning. So I found this article here, and I got that quote from there. But this is an article about our colleges and the online learning that they're doing. And what it says here is that what most colleges are doing right now is not online education, but just remote learning. They're doing their lectures online, and then providing the content of the courses just in that format, and because it's really just a stopgap method that they're trying to get through the next few weeks. And that's okay for where we are right now. Asynchronous is, on the other hand, student-led, and usually students get to complete it at their own time and at their own pace, whether this is for a week or for longer than that. And what was that? And so the asynchronous mode is kind of what I'm doing with my doctorate right now. A lot of grad classes are done asynchronously. Online, you get a week to finish your content and get it done and move through all of that. And when you're thinking about as a teacher in those modes, and how the question then becomes, how can you use both of those modes or one of them the most effectively based off of the tools that you currently have available to you. The mode you choose also kind of has to do with this teacher versus facilitator conversation. So when you're a teacher, you're in the classroom, you have your students right in front of you. You're working with them, whether it's on projects or you're giving a lecture or they're working on independent group projects or stuff like that. It's a very different feel, even more so than, let's say you're doing the synchronous version of online learning and you have them in a Zoom classroom and you do breakout rooms and stuff like that. You still are going to be missing out on a lot of the interactions and the stuff you overhear and the subtle facial expressions that you get in the classroom. And if you're doing the asynchronous model where you're assigning them content, they're working through it at their own pace, you're really kind of changing your role from a teacher to a facilitator of learning. And so what does a facilitator of learning look like? So I have just broken down into 3 major categories, and kind of and these are research-based pieces that are proven that facilitators of online learning need to be skillful and good at. So the first section is communication, and written communication is absolutely key to working in an online environment. Even if you do face-to-face sessions or Zooms or something like that, most of your communication is going to come through email or chat or some other written medium, and you need to be able to communicate effectively that way. And then the second piece with communication is understanding how to identify students who need help without that face-to-face interaction, whether that's from looking at the work they've been submitting or doing, or how they're communicating back to you. As we go through these webinars, some of these things we're going to be looking at. This afternoon session is specifically how to support your students when you don't see them face to face.
Hi, Bo.
So the second category is organization, and one of the biggest things for online learning and teaching is time management, and then managing your workflow, because it's a very different workflow than it would be in the classroom. A lot of your workflow in the online world is making sure you have content ready to go. You can't really just wing it like you would in the classroom sometime. You didn't get planned it. Oh, let's pull the PowerPoint up from last year. It doesn't work that way, especially if you're not doing a face-to-face session and you need to have something available for students to do on a certain day. And that holds true whether it's you're doing continuity of education and you're teaching fully online, or even if you're just providing enrichment exercises on a day-to-day basis. They need to be ready and prepared.
One second. If you guys don't have your cameras muted, if you could please that would be great.
Yeah, I see you guys aren't gonna go back, huh?
No, not until April 6th. So we have a meeting tomorrow, like you Zoom in to this meeting and they're gonna tell you what you have to do.
I see we're supposed to go back for it.
We're all learning with Zooms.
But our Graco sent a letter to the governor telling him we can't social distance and reconsider because we're not life sustaining, because they got some.
Oh, hold on.
Okay. I found the mute all button. It just took me a minute. Sorry about that. I'll unmute you at the end when we get to the questions here. Even I'm learning where that button was located. All right. So just kind of moving through here, our last one is engagement. And it is important to, as in the online world, to have high quality student-teacher interactions, even if you're not seeing the students face to face. And also to create high quality learning experiences, because you as a teacher might not be there to answer their questions. And so you need to be able to provide experiences that they're going to be able to work through themselves and answer their own questions and not be confused or get to a problem and have and not be able to answer their own questions and problems. And just kind of finally to look at the student perspective. So what are your students experiencing as an online student? And these are kind of some of the buzzwords and the catchwords about online learning that are out there based off of research and based off of practical experience and stuff like that. A lot of times online learning is a student-directed learning experience. As I said earlier, they're going to get a piece of content and they're going to do something with it. With no teacher present, many times, especially asynchronously, they're going to have to figure it out by themselves and work on it themselves. It allows for flexible content because you can easily differentiate or have multiple learning paths that students can go down. The content can tend to be more accessible as well, and just due to some of the tools available, like text-to-speech tools and captioning tools for videos and stuff like that, it's very easy to meet the needs of a lot of learners through online content that you provide. One of the biggest changes on the student end really is that all assessments are almost all open book and open note. And as a teacher, you need to figure out how to make your assessments still assess what you wanted to, knowing that the student is most likely going to reference the course material and the internet because they're going to be have Google available to them. And so if it's just a factual assessment, they're going to get 100% probably. And you need to figure out a way to maybe change that assessment, and if you're really looking at assessing what they're doing. From a negative perspective, and I wonder, as we have been home this last week and a half or so, if you're starting to feel this too with the social distancing and all that, but the isolating nature of working by yourself for a lot of students can be pretty strong. Some students really thrive off of it and enjoy it, but some people, you go crazy. And this is one of the reasons we are taking the time to do this webinar series for you, is to, number one, give you some quality professional learning outside of your schools because they're closed, but also to give you a chance to network and to meet with other teachers throughout our region, to feel more connected and to build kind of a community of teachers and staff working together to get our students educated into a good place. So,
Scott, can you go back to
yeah.
slide 8, please? Something else that has been going on with like the Twitter. I know Scott, Aaron, and I have talked about this a couple times, but as a facilitator as well, depending on what your district chooses, it's going to be important, because it's important to remember that as students, and I'm sure Scott's going to talk about this afternoon, this is all new for students for the most part as well, no matter what your district chooses. And the reality is, when there's virtual learning, it's not like you can stand on a Zoom session for 7 or 8 hours. So it's going to be a nice meet and greet, and you're going to have to think creatively how you can facilitate discussions and be realistic with what your students can handle. You can't, depending on what other teachers are doing, perhaps you talk as a district or as a building, as a team, I'm going to do this long and I'm going to do this. You can't, it's unrealistic to think that perhaps all 30 of your students can log on, or if you have a bunch of classes, like 100 students can log on at this specific time, which is why Scott mentioned the asynchronous. And I think that's really important to think about, especially when you think if your district's in rural Pennsylvania as well. So we are here to help you with thinking outside the box. A lot of times with assessment, it might turn into project-based learning. The paper pencil tests, it might be tough because it isn't open-ended. So being realistic and thinking outside the box with how you can facilitate is going to be very important. Aaron, do you want to add anything as well?
I learned a lot from Scott this morning. I agree with the synchronous versus asynchronous idea, and really thinking about that as you get started on your online education. And I liked his the difference between online education and remote learning, and us all being okay with the remote learning to start, and the difference between the two, I thought was a really good way to put it for everybody.
Yeah, and again, the other curve is parents. So getting parents not only to understand how to do this education, but the importance of the education as well. Erin does work a lot primarily with the elementary, so she is on these calls for the elementary perspective as well. So Scott, do you have anything else to say before we open up to question and answer?
No, let's go ahead and just take some questions if people have them. You can either, and I think we've done this before, but you can either do it vocally, or if you want to type it in the chat. Either way is fine, and we will go ahead and answer those.
Yeah, if you've never used Zoom before, all you need to do is click on the bottom left to the unmute button, and then you can speak. On the bottom bar, there's also a chat icon, and you can chat and put it in the post to everyone.
It's Linda. Can I just make a comment that another way to unmute is to hold down your space bar and talk? It keeps you from having to click all the time. It's just, I find it a little easier when I'm in a, so just a comment.
Wow, that's nifty. I never knew that. There you go, Linda.
That's a great idea.
The other item is if you do start talking, your microphone, you should get a message on the screen that says you are currently muted, that you can't, that nobody's hearing you. So Zoom is smart enough to tell you that.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have a bunch of different districts on this call right now, which is exciting. So does anyone want to chime in with even like, I mean, it doesn't even have to be about what is online learning. If you have any questions right now, we're happy to help before we wrap up. Looks like here, Erin, we have a question in the chat here. Any advice for primary teachers? Is it almost necessary for a parent to be available to help them? If they don't have a parent available, what is the best approach to helping them?
Yeah, Kelsey, I totally understand your question. I not only sit in this role, but I also have a 5-year-old daughter at home who I'm trying to do the Keep On Learning with myself. And I totally agree. It is really essential for students like that, 5, 6, 7 years old, to have a parent side by side. I think that's why we kind of need to think about that asynchronous, where it's on their own time and their own pace when they can, because we do have a lot of parents home right now with their children, but we also have a lot of parents that are still working. So not restricting them to only a certain time frame that they can jump on and it be available, letting it be open to them time-wise, I think is really important so that they can have the help. I also think another part of that is thinking about what Rebecca said, to really think outside of the box at what we can give them as activities, not necessarily like a fact check, but something as simple as go around your home and find 5 objects that are cylinders. Trying to do more practical application like that versus paper pencil assignments. If you need more, go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was just going to say I can answer more detailed questions at any time, or we can do our own conversations together too.
We have found once they hit about 3rd grade, they're okay. They're okay to work by themselves. More so, but for K1, 2 is it's hard. I would say almost impossible for them to do it by themselves without a coach or like a parent or guardian or someone there with them. So
I would agree.
Just text to speech wise, you've seen some questions about that. Most online learning platforms, if you're using an LMS, have text to speech built into them, and Google can read to you as well. Thinking of text to speech sites, so I saw a question about that.
Yeah, we're planning on having an assistive technology session next week. There's only so many that we can put together at once. If we could throw them all out there right now, it'd be great, but we also don't want to overwhelm everyone. But yes, so I'm glad. Thanks, Scott, for chiming in on that.
Yep.
The other big thing is, available as far as office hours, like Erin said, even the elementary kids. I know a lot of people are using the Seesaw app so that they can communicate back and forth with the teacher. I know some teachers have asked, my mom's an educator in Lancaster County, and they were told that they need to call all of their students. And that can be hard when you have only your personal device. So Google Voice allows you to get your own, if you're not comfortable with your own phone, obviously calling. Google Voice allows you to create a phone number that's linked to your phone that you could call students from. And also, I think it's *67 that teachers across the state have been using to call from home, so it blocks your number. But if you're doing some at-home phone calls. So, any other questions regarding, I mean, we're here literally every morning, well, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 o'clock and 1 o'clock, except Friday is just 9 o'clock, but.
We would also love to hear any topics that you're interested in or anything that you find that your district is in need of right now for professional development. That's what we're here for, to help you all and give you tools that you can use. So
Yeah.
Please feel free to reach out for that too.
Yeah, we are, these are all free as well. The curriculum coordinators, if your district has them, they are aware, and the superintendent. So please feel free to jump on. Scott, can you go to the Online Learning Hub page or walk them through how to find it?
Yeah, if you found this through a weird way, you can go to our website at the home, iu17.org. Under professional learning, there's the Online Learning Hub link. That's going to just take you to our online learning site here. So after today, we'll upload the recordings just underneath here, and you can access all the content from the recording there. You can kind of see the upcoming lineup for the rest of the week, next 2 weeks. Each Friday, we're doing just an open hour conversation. We'll be here, and we can chat with you pretty much about any topic you'd like to, or if you're just looking to connect with some other educators to get out of your home, feel free to stop by for that time as well.
Yeah, and with that, where our intention is, if we get enough people on the call, like right now we had 23 this morning. I would love if we could set breakout rooms as far as, primary, secondary, or content area specific breakout rooms, so you guys could have some more in-depth conversations on, finding solutions and thinking outside the box. So what I'm going to do is, in the chat box, I am going to give you 3 links. The one is the feedback form. So if you could please give us your feedback. Again, it helps if any superintendents or anyone's like, hey, attend professional learning, and we can let you know or let them know that you attended. The webinar website, that's a quick link right there. And then a suggestion form, like Erin mentioned, if you want to make any suggestions. And Scott, can you show them that on the Online Learning Hub page where they could do that?
Oh, yeah. Yep, just right on the top here, there's a suggestion. You click on this, make suggestions here, and you can say whatever you want to. We'll take under consideration.
Yeah.
I saw we just had one for Microsoft Teams, so.
Perfect.
Great.
What district are you in? Whoever wrote Microsoft Teams?
I think she's a Williamsport teacher.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Some districts do Google, some districts do Microsoft. So we're just trying to gauge where we're at. So.
Okay.
Awesome. And last but not least, Thursday afternoons we are featuring like special guests. This Thursday, we're doing Study Islands with Ed Bentham, and they'll be talking about a lot of, obviously, you guys know, a lot of resources have been, the sites, or they've lifted sort of the district users prices and things like that. So this week is Study Island and how to use it. And then next week is Nearpod. So a lot of things made free now.
Okay.
So without any further questions, we thank you for your time this morning. We will stop the recording now, Scott.